Hi, this is Tom Lacrosse. I'm Manager of Business Development for vLogic Systems, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar focused on real-time occupancy tracking. The webinar is being held live, and all calls have been placed on mute to lessen any type of background noise. It is interactive, so you can post questions anytime online by clicking on the icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We'll try to answer all the questions at the end of the webinar, but if we don't get to your question during the webcast, we'll be sure one of our speakers does get back to you. Today I'm joined by our Chief Operating Officer, Dwayne Harris. vLogic's association with the VA and other hospital organizations has gone back over 20 years, and we've done a long list of CAFM-related projects as well as IWMS projects all over the nation. vLogic has developed a web-based system called vLogic FM, and it provides a technology platform to facilitate solutions that are drawing-centric, where the drawings and database files are tightly coupled and accessed through the internet. Dwayne and I will provide an inside view to real-time occupancy tracking, specifically for medical center professionals, and explore the challenges of managing space and optimizing space in a most efficient way. Again, we welcome your interest. So with that, I'm going to give a quick overview of the subject area, and then I'll hand it over to Dwayne. This is just a quick list of our active clients within the VA. I believe most folks that are on the call right now are from the VA. So we are working with, it's actually 40 plus installations across a number of different VISNs that are listed here. In terms of the space management challenge, from our perspective, we know that employee and space costs end up being two of the top expense items for any facility. So anytime you can optimize that space management function, you can yield some significant ROI. It might be in terms of construction and or avoidance of costs because you don't need to expand because you actually have space that you can use that you're not using effectively today. Making sure you can optimize any type of revenue generation and or reimbursements, as well as more efficient scheduling and improved customer service. In a recent survey that we had done, we found that exam room space usage was actually less than 60%. So people within the facility were looking for additional space, and yet when you actually did the tracking and understood where it was being utilized, it was actually less than 60%. And in a broader study with more functions, we actually did a return on investment model, and the payback period was 16 months. So certainly something that can address itself and have significant payback over time. And for today, we're going to talk about mostly the technology, leveraging some type of technology to optimize space management. Obviously, we'll focus on our platform as part of that. And you'll see that it can overlap multiple areas, including planning, operations, and compliance. And there's just some examples listed here of where that optimal space management can help support and make overall space utilization more efficient. So this is part 2 of the 3-part series. The first part was the space management basics, where we tried to provide some details on how the platform supports what, where, and who. Today we're going to be focused on utilizing real-time occupancy tracking to help support that same requirement. And with regards to this is looking at both real-time, what is currently being used today, as well as the ability to go back in history and look at what was used over time and where might spaces be underutilized. And part 3, which will be in the mid-October timeframe, is leveraging hoteling and hot desking. I won't talk much about that, but that'll be part 3, middle of October timeframe. We'll be putting that, and we'll make sure you guys get invites for that. This is just a quick view of the platform. As you can see, it covers multiple different areas. Today's focus is just going to be on space and how optimizing space can help support more effective use of the facility. And then this is just a quick picture that you may see as part of the demo aspect of the webinar that shows how space can actually be understood what you're using. And we do have a classic implementation within the VA that typically covers room number, name, function, departmental and/or service line assignments, CAI space driver, and then there's another number of other functions, and you'll see the bullet next to last is real-time occupancy tracking. And that's the topic that we're going to focus on for this webinar. We've kind of split them up into those three areas to make sure that we could cover enough detail and respond to enough questions in the short period of time that most people have to participate in these functions. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne Harris. He'll be going through a quick demo and some additional context around the platform and where the value might be to you. And at the end of the demo, before we actually sign off, we'll answer some questions, and there will be a survey that's presented, and we love to get your feedback. So please look for that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Great, thanks, Tom. As Tom mentioned, this is the second episode in a series of three episodes of the IWMS-based space management webinar series. And I'd like to start with just a review of our infrastructure once again, because this time we're going to do this in the context of our main subject today, which is occupancy tracking or real-time tracking. And as you can see here, we have a drawings repository, application server, data engine, and a web server. These cloud components allow us to be able to serve up all of the facility management IWMS software, VLogic FM, to our customers over mobile devices, web browsers, without any real IT footprint. And this is an important point for us. We are aware from our own customers that not having to involve IT is really important, as it for our customers and for the speed in which we can deploy this. And so therefore we don't have any third-party plugins. We have no application installations. No standard network ports are needed. Just non-standard network ports are needed for VLogic FM. And to this infrastructure, we've added additional components to enable our real-time tracking. And essentially, what you see there on the right is what we've added. There are three new components added to our traditional cloud infrastructure. Those three components are our wireless sensors that you see here in the rooms for capturing motion data, a cellular gateway for relaying motion data from sensors to VLogic FM over a standard cellular network like AT&T or Verizon, which is what you see up here, this cellular network icon. And finally, the third component that we're adding is a sensor management server in the cloud for receiving the cellular data stream and pushing it to our VLogic FM tracking software on the cloud. Now, like the standard infrastructure, the tracking infrastructure is designed to provide a solution with little to no IT footprint at all. None of these components interface with the local area network. Wireless sensors are battery operated and can be attached to the ceiling of any room you want censored without any attachments. It's just a battery, the sensor, and the ceiling. And that's it for the sensor. The cellular gateway, they do not need to be plugged into the local network either. All that's needed is power. So if you have a plug, you plug in the gateway and you're good to go. Again, the takeaway here is that the entire system, the tracking system, is designed to be plug and play. As for security, the sensor data sent to VLogic FM is securely encrypted, SSL encryption. Furthermore, the data stream only contains the sensor ID and the motion information itself. So there's no identifying information included in the data stream, such as room, people, anything like that. There's no identification data at all. So what this means is that even if the impossible happens and someone did decrypt the stream, they wouldn't know how to attribute the data to any actual rooms in the facility. So it just increases the security of the system itself. The room matching between the sensor and what room it's attached to actually happens on vLogic FM itself in the cloud. Now that we've seen the infrastructure, let's review the software modules, including what we covered in episode 1 of this webinar series, and of course, what we will cover today. So this is the 24 functional modules that we covered, that we reviewed with you last time, divided into these 6 areas that Tom mentioned earlier: space, assets, utilities, conditions, real property, and drawings. And these gray boxes are the software modules that are activated in the system itself, and the items or the objects that users will interact with. So each one of these boxes provides specific functions to our users. So let's highlight what we have covered today. So last time we covered admin module, as-built module, employees, and space. And today we're going to cover the tracking module. That is real-time tracking using Internet of Things based sensors. And then tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but in the next episode of this series, we'll be covering scheduling. And the scheduling module lets you share critical spaces like conference rooms and patient exam rooms. Furthermore, it provides tools for managing the emerging hybrid workforce. And as Tom mentioned, our research shows that about 60% of the workforce will take turns working from home or from the traditional office. And in some instances, facility managers may want to optimize space utilization by creating hot desks or office hoteling spaces as well. And so these spaces allow multiple workers to share the same desk or space on an orderly scheduled basis. And that's the scheduling module that you see there that we'll cover in the next episode. All right, so that brings us to the actual software. And what I'd like to do right now is perhaps give you just a quick review of the modules that we've already covered before we jump to the tracking module. So again, last time we covered what we call the classic suite of space management, and and if we look up here in the navigation pane, that's the as-built module, the space module, and the CAI module. I'll also touch on employee module, which is one of the items that we covered in the last conversation as well. Now, all of these were to answer the question of, what do we have, where is it located, and who is using it? And so those are the again, administration, as-built, space, and employees is what we covered last time. And I'll just simply jump to as-built and just give you a brief summary of what we covered before we get to tracking. So let me just jump to a drawing here. So this is a list of drawings in the as-built module, and this module lets you upload your master as-built drawings. But the real work here is the services that we provide as part of the subscription to create a master architectural as-built from the multiple revisions that you might have in the field, which is unfortunately very common. As these buildings are dynamic, every time there's a new addition, people generate new as-builts, but they don't put everything together to create one master as-built. And so, as part of the as-built onboarding process, we will take all those multiple as-builts and combine them into one master as-built, and then we'll upload it here to the as-built module. And as you'll see here, this particular drawing is a CAD drawing. It's not a GIF file. It's not a static PDF file. This is the actual CAD file that you use to build or construct the hospital, or this particular customer did. And so all the metrics are used by the system to fill in all the square footage and other space information in the system. And so the way to look at this as a precursor to jumping to to other modules besides as-built is that this provides the foundation. And on top of this drawing foundation, we will layer a number of what we call intelligence layers, one for space, one for employees, one for CAI, or whatever other kinds of data that you want to layer on top of this. And so we'll take that data that's located on various databases, and we'll link them to specific rooms, such as ultrasound room or fitting room. We'll be able to associate all kinds of information to this, creating very, very powerful management opportunities for you. And so as a first example, if I jump to space module, this layer, what space module does is it applies a space layer on top of the drawing. And now you were able to get things like usable gross, external wall, floor common, vertical space. You'll be able to see all your sites and how much square footage are at your site. You'll be able to see all of your organizations and how much space they're using on these various floors. It'll give you the gross areas for the various services in this particular instance. So it gives you a great deal of power. And to demonstrate that, let me just jump very, very quickly to this, just to demonstrate the concept of layering. So if I zoom in on this drawing, it's the same drawing that you saw in the as-built module, but now what we have is the ability to associate these particular spaces with a whole bunch of data on the right, which is what we call the data grid. And you're able to associate things like room number, space category, space function, gross area, cost categories. The list goes on. I mean, there are some of our customers that are using this to develop infection maps, by associating different kinds of risk factors in these fields associated with different spaces. And it's extremely powerful because you can do things like, show a distribution map of all of your service lines that's located on this drawing. And what it will do is it will essentially color code the drawing with all of your service lines. So in this picture, let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. So all your service lines are now arrayed in this legend, and it gives you the area, the square footage area for all of those spaces, and then color codes the map so you can be able to see that very quickly. And importantly, you can then output this very same information into a report in black and white, so you can actually see what it is that you're looking for. Let me just make sure I have the right report here. And it will not only show you your gross area and everything else that you need, but you are able to then export all of this into Excel by simply clicking the export button, and right down here is the area distribution report in Excel. So just to summarize, we had as-built, which establishes the drawings. You now are providing a layer on top of this for space, and it gives you a great deal of power to be able to show associations against the spaces, and you're able to do some pretty powerful things like do the distribution maps. You can also do searches for things like let's say exam room. You want to find exam rooms on this map. Very quickly, it will find that, highlight that on the data grid, and then blink them on the floor plan itself. And you can do really cool things like well, rather than counting it manually, you can just get the total gross area for all your spaces in this. And you can also add a legend to this as well. And you can zoom in and see the total gross area of all your exam rooms. Very powerful, very quick. Another layer that you can add on top of this that's unique to the VA is the CAI module, the third component of what we call the classic suite of modules. And the CAI module, of course, is the capital asset inventory module that we built specifically for the VA. We understand that this is a very important, that the VA has a very important reporting requirements to the federal government, to its HQ in Washington, D.C., and who requires that, at least on the facility side of this report, that specific drivers are used. And so what we've done is we've hard-coded these CAI space drivers right into the software. So it makes it very, very simple to do reports against those drivers. So you're able to, the very same drawing that we saw earlier, you're now able to see all of the square footage for each one of these CAI drivers and be able to, and you can also export, like before, export that out to Excel. Again, very fast, very quick, very powerful. Okay, and then one other module I'd like to touch on before we jump to tracking is the employee module. The employee module is important from the sense, from the perspective of, we asked in the last episode 3 questions, right? Who, where, excuse me, what do we have, where is it located, and who is using it? And employees is perhaps the main module for answering the question of who is using your, the various spaces in your facility. And so again, just as in space, we've added a space layer, intelligence layer. Here, we're adding a layer of employee data on top of the as-built module. So, and the same concept here, you have a whole bunch of data that's related to employees that can now be associated with your drawing. And so for example, if you're looking for a particular person, you can just check on that person, and it will show that person where that person is assigned on the map on your floor plan. In addition, you can look at stacking plans for that same building, so you can actually see what your assignment levels are, and who's using what on the floors of your drawings. It's all there for planning, and you can also see in the blank ones those rooms that are vacant, in addition to the color-coded rooms associated with each of your service lines. So again, very quick, very fast, very powerful. Okay, so those are the modules that we covered in episode 1. And what I'd like to do now is jump to the tracking module. And let's first start the tracking conversation with discussing who the main stakeholders are in the real-time tracking arena. And it turns out that there are 2 main ones, and there may be more, but these are the 2 main ones that we've identified. First is the operations manager, and their requirement is they need actual occupancy data for space planning. In the past, it's projected data or it's expected data, but not actual occupancy data. And so what real-time sensors do is it not only provides you real-time live data, but it also logs that real-time data so that over time you start gathering a really valuable trend pattern of what's the occupancy rate in my building, right, in a particular space. Even does it fluctuate based on time? Does it fluctuate based on role? There's all kinds of things that you can now pursue with real information. And what that does is it actually decreases your risk for planning, budgeting, calculating future spends, because you now have actual data and not projected data. It's a significant tool in the operation manager's tool belt. Second are clinicians. And for them, they don't care about all the planning. All they care about is, I need to know now if a patient exam room is available or a conference room is available. And I don't have time to dick around. I just want to know where it is, so I don't have to go walk the hallways or make multiple phone calls to find out if there's an available patient room, exam room. And the real-time tracking sensors allow the clinicians to be able to see that information immediately, or the clinicians' admins, the people that support the clinicians and provide the assignments for them. So those are the 2 stakeholders for real-time tracking. And let me just jump to the actual tracking software itself, so we can actually see how the software meets the demands of these 2 stakeholders. Okay, so let me jump to the tracking module. Okay, so the first view that you see here is the dashboard view. And the dashboard view gives you a number of different perspectives. Actually, let me just log out of that and log into this one, which I think might be a little bit better for this particular demo. Okay, great. Let's jump to tracking. All right, so this dashboard shows you 4 boxes. First, you'll see there a box for the number of rooms that you have and number of sensors that you have associated with the number of rooms. And if you click there, it actually shows you the rooms that you have and the sensor ID that's associated with that particular room. The next 2 boxes give you, sort of the 80-20 rule. That is rooms that are less than 20% occupied and rooms that are over 80% occupied. And that allows you to very quickly, as a manager, be able to determine, gee, these rooms are not occupied at all, or these rooms are almost at capacity very quickly. And on the right-hand side, you see what your average aggregate occupancy rate is across the facility. On the bottom, you see those rooms, and their occupancy rates, 59% for C724, and room C745 has an occupancy rate of 40. You can also see that over time. In this particular case, it's a period of 1 week. I can also show this by last week. I can show it by this month. I can show it by last month. Again, this is all occupancy data that has been logged, tracked, so that you, as the user, the manager, i.e. the first stakeholder, the operations manager, can see what your occupancy rate is and what the trends are for the dates and or rooms, over time. So that's essentially the first stakeholder, the operations manager, who needs actual occupancy data. The second stakeholder in this particular tracking module doesn't care about the logs necessarily. They want to know live information. And in this particular case, this live tracking view shows you all of the rooms, the number of rooms, the number that are occupied currently, right now, this very moment in time. And in fact, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see this blue last updated at 2:29 p.m., 15 seconds ago, and I can click that to refresh it to right now. So what we're seeing here is live, actual real-time data from Internet of Things based sensors, arrayed in 2 particular locations at this location, at room C724 and C745. Obviously, with more sensors, you get a lot more rich information, but here is what you see in all. This very quickly shows you the number that are occupied right now at this moment in time, and the number that are unoccupied or available at this particular time. And as you get more and more of these things, let's say you have 50, 60, 100 of these sensors in these rooms that are censored, you can export that information out to be able to use that later. Now, let me just actually view a chart of one of these items here, C724. And this particular chart shows you the occupancy information today. So, from 624 all the way to 116 currently to 230, and all the blips here show you the occupation of that particular room at particular different times of the day. You can also see this information as data, and you can export this data out to Excel for further processing if you want to do that. Now, you can also, in addition to viewing the chart, you can also view a drawing of this occupancy data. Let me just launch that particular drawing. And the drawing will show you immediately, right now, at this moment in time, that is 2:30 p.m., 10 seconds ago, what rooms on this floor are available, and it colorizes them in green. Now, if you move your mouse over any one of these spaces, that actually gives you all of the space information for that particular room. So this particular one is C724, it's a conference room. This one here is C745, and that is a doctor's office. So very quickly, you can refresh that to see live data right now. And in this particular case, it changed. And so to summarize what we have here, one more thing before we do the summarizing. in the settings, we're able to add additional sensors to the mix. So if you add more more rooms, you can add an additional sensor. And it's very, very simple to just essentially put a battery in the sensor, stick it up on the ceiling, add it here. For example, let me just click add. You put your sensor number there, your sensor type. And in this particular example that we have here, these are motion and occupancy sensors. But you can also add in the future things like humidity, temperature. For example, there's a number of hospitals that have systems that cover all kinds of controls in the hospital. But it turns out there's a lot of different refrigerators scattered across different floors that contain critical, drugs and everything else that are not censored. And so we could add sensors to those and be able to track those. And there's any number of things that we could do in addition to providing an independent source of verification against what the hospital control systems cover. And so to summarize, these are the benefits of real-time tracking. So again, these are the stakeholders. For operations managers, real-time tracking reduces cost with better planning data. It gives them immediate access to actual occupancy data, not projected data. It gives them increased room sharing efficiency. And then for clinicians, they get faster access to available patient exam rooms and improve facility satisfaction. So that in a nutshell is tracking. And Tom, I'm going to hand it back to you for Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne. I appreciate it. So we do have a few questions that we want to go through. First one is, how many sensors do you need? And I guess I'll try to answer that. So the typical rooms that are being monitored, at least what we've seen so far from a medical care side of things, are patient exam rooms and conference rooms. So those are the ones that, at least from what we've seen so far, are typically people want to track. And then there's different ways to determine which ones you want to track and how many sensors you want. Some people say, well, I'm going to kind of do it room type at a time. So they might try to censor all their exam rooms, or they might say, I want to censor just the exam rooms on this floor to start with. The sensors can be moved, as well as the gateway can be moved, so they're fairly portable. So you may want to do that tracking within a specific area at a time, maybe where you think you have the most area in terms of improving that overall space utilization. Dwayne, there was a question on the cost of the sensors. Do you have a ballpark number for the sensors in the gateway?
Let me just add to your answer to the first question real quick. And the answer to that question is that, as many sensors as you want, based on what Tom said, the types of rooms that you want to sensor. Now, the gateway can handle up to 80 sensors per gateway. And you can have as many gateways as you need to cover all of the spaces that you have in the facility. The gateway has a radius of about a signal radius of about 1,200 feet in every direction, and so it should cover quite a bit. But we generally do a POC to determine what kinds of dead spaces you have and how many gateways you need and how many sensors you need based on your requirements. Tom, what was the second question?
The second question was around the ballpark costs for those hardware.
Yeah. The cost for each of the sensors is around 100 and change, 130, 150, somewhere around there, based on the kinds of sensors. And the gateways cost in the 200 range. So they're not very expensive. And there's a data plan as well that's associated with that, and that's all built into the plan. But it's, the hardware, which we just pass through for the most part. The only thing we charge is for the software SaaS on top of that, and whatever deployment issues there might be, deployment costs there might be. But as to the hardware, about 130, 150 for the sensors, and about 200 or so for the gateway.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Next question is around those percentages, the 80-20 rule. Is there any variability with regards to how, what you set your thresholds at below a certain amount and or above a certain amount?
Yeah, we set the 20/80 as we thought that might be a starting point. We can certainly change that to whatever fits your particular facility or whatever you guys want to set it to, because everybody has different thresholds. So that can be changed. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Last question I think we're going to be able to handle is around master planning and how can this support master planning. So I think there's multiple elements to this. First of all, in terms of the overall master plan, you need to understand, as Dwayne mentioned, and I guess as I had mentioned also, what do you have? What's the facility look like? Within our platform, that's called as-built, and it captures that detail of what you have, service lines, and being able to segment how much space is allocated to individual service lines. There's also some aspects of master planning that look at that real-time usage of those spaces to make sure that we understand not only what we have, but how is it being used today and how much is it utilized. So there's multiple concepts within master planning. I can provide one example. We had done work with Vision 7, and while we don't have folks that typically do master planning, we do partner with different organizations, and we do have a somewhat of a partnership with a SDVOSB, and they actually did a master plan for Vision 7, and they said they had reported to us that because all that information was available and out there with regards to spaces, how they're using, square footage, and so forth, that they actually were able to save the client about $500,000 because the data was there available. There wasn't a lot of work to figure out what space was where and how it was being used. So certainly some additional benefits going beyond just individual spaces and more into the, I guess I'll call it more of the strategic level of things. I think that's all we have time for today. Please remember you can ask questions anytime. Just feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to get your feedback on that survey. And with that, Dwayne, thanks for your support on the webinar, and feel free to reach out to us. And again, we'd love to get your feedback on the survey. So please fill that out. If anybody has additional questions, let us know, and we'll get you some feedback. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a great day.
Thank you.